Welcome back to Lost channel. My name is Anton Vieltsin. I'm an attorney in the Southern District of California here in San Diego. For the past couple of weeks, we've been focusing on illegal or unreasonable searches by the police. But if you've been watching my channel or you've read the Constitution, you already know that the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. So this week, let's move on and discuss seizures, what constitutes a seizure, and when it becomes unreasonable. Why is this important? If the officers seize property without your consent, without some exception to the Fourth Amendment warrant requirement, whatever evidence they find can be suppressed and cannot be used against you in trial. Today we're going to look at a case with a variation asking the question whether the officers who remove a luggage bag underneath a bus into the seating area of the bus constitutes an illegal seizure of that luggage, and whether whatever found inside that luggage would be suppressed. And before we go on, I want to thank you for watching me on YouTube, hitting that subscribe button, of course sharing my channel with your friends and family. If you're listening to the podcast version of this recording on Audible or Spotify, please give my podcast a 5-star rating. And since the holidays are right around the corner, consider going to losthash.com and purchasing one of these t-shirts, the Do Not Arrest This Person t-shirt, maybe for your uncle who always gets in trouble. Anyways, thanks for watching, and let's go on.
Quick message from Lostash. Are you charged with a crime? Or do you want to know your rights if stopped by police? Watch California attorney Anton Vieltsin discuss legal cases from the Supreme Court, Ninth Circuit, and California state courts on the Lostash YouTube page. Anton has handled hundreds of federal and state criminal cases, has an in-depth knowledge of the law, and has the best mustache ever. Subscribe to the Lostash YouTube page. That's Lawstache.
Today we're discussing United States versus Alvarez-Monzo, and this case deals with unreasonable seizure. First, let me give you some factual background. A Greyhound bus arrives to a depot. Officers of the Drug Interdiction Unit are conducting random checks. They come up to the cargo area of this particular bus, and there they see that the cargo area is not particularly full. There's only 5-7 bags, and one of those bags catches an eye of an investigator. Here's the issues with the bag. The bag itself had a padlock in it that was aftermarket. The tag on the bag had inconsistent travel destinations, meaning that all the cities were listed on that bag, but they were inconsistent with the travel, meaning that nobody would travel in that particular order from city to city. The officer also noticed that the final destination was handwritten into the ticket, even though this tag was computer generated. The investigator said that this was his first time ever noticing a tag that was altered, handwritten, when it was first generated by the computer. The officer, with his suspicion, took the bag out of the cargo area inside the passenger compartment of the bus. He held it up and asked all the passengers to step up if it was their bag. When nobody answered, he noticed that Mr. Alvarez had a different look on his face than other passengers. The investigator then made a decision to go back of the bus and ask each passenger individually whether it was his bag. He asked every passenger, and when he got to Mr. Alvarez said that it was in fact his bag. Now, the ticket or the tag on the bag had a different name. The name was Francisco Perez. The officer asked Mr. Alvarez to get off the bus, and they began to talk about the bag, or the contents of it. The officer also asked Mr. Alvarez for identification. At this point, Mr. Alvarez was so nervous that his hands were shaking, and as he tried to get his wallet out of his back pocket, he almost dropped it on the ground. And instead of opening the wallet, he simply gave the whole thing to the officer. The officer then asked Mr. Alvarez for consent to search the wallet. And Mr. Alvarez consented. Now, this is a quick reminder to never consent to searches, but here he did. The officer then opened the wallet. He found Mr. Alvarez's ID in it, as well as the claim ticket with the name of Francisco Perez for this particular bag. The officers then took the bag to the substation. They had a canine sniff the bag. There was an alert. They received a warrant to search the bag, and inside they found some narcotics. Now, Mr. Alvarez argues that the narcotics found inside, as well as the information in his wallet, namely the tag with the name of Francisco Perez, all of that information should be suppressed and cannot be used against him in trial. He says that the initial removal of the bag from the cargo area into the passenger compartment constituted an illegal or unreasonable seizure of his property, and thus everything has to be suppressed. Now, remember, the Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. But the very first question we have to answer, whether this removal of the bag constitutes quote-unquote a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. The Supreme Court held in United States v. Jacobsen that a Fourth Amendment seizure of property occurs when there is some meaningful interference with an individual's possessory interest in that property. In Va Lerie, this court applied Jacobsen in the context presented by this case, namely property entrusted to a third-party common carrier. In Va Lerie, the banc court determined that law enforcement's detention of property entrusted to a third-party common carrier constitutes a Fourth Amendment seizure only when the detention does any of the following. Number 1, delays a passenger's travel or significantly impacts the passenger's freedom of movement. Number 2, delays the checked luggage timely delivery. Or finally, number 3, deprives the carrier of its custody of the checked luggage. The court focuses on that third factor. And if you noticed, it does not turn on where the bag is being taken, but rather at whose direction is the bag being removed from the cargo area into the passenger compartment. And here the government concedes that it was the officer, the investigator, who made a decision to remove the bag from the cargo area into the passenger compartment. He was acting in his own accord and not under the direction of the Greyhound. And because he deprived Greyhound of the custody of the bag, this would constitute a search under the Fourth Amendment. The lower court also made a determination that at that point the officer lacked reasonable suspicion to remove the bag. And thus, without reasonable suspicion, this search becomes unreasonable under the Fourth Amendment, and all the evidence found inside the bag has to be suppressed. The court then moves on to the second question, namely whether the consent to search the wallet was valid. When we talk about consent, we often discuss whether that consent was voluntary. Here the court doesn't get there, and here's why. Under the Fourth Amendment, we have a doctrine called the fruits of the poisonous tree. And all the evidence found after illegal conduct by the police has to be suppressed as well. Here, the search of the wallet came after the illegal seizure of the bag, and thus the evidence found in the wallet also has to be suppressed under the fruits of the poisonous tree doctrine. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a little bit more about seizures under the Fourth Amendment. And let me give you some final thoughts and takeaways. There are two takeaways in this case. Takeaway number 1, the officer's removal of the luggage bag from the cargo area of the bus into the passenger compartment of the bus to locate the owner of the bag constitutes a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. And takeaway number 2, the search of the wallet that came subsequent to that illegal seizure, all the evidence in that wallet also has to be suppressed as fruits of the poisonous tree. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share my channel with your friends and family. If you're listening to the podcast version of this recording on Audible or Spotify, please give my podcast a 5-star rating. And finally, if you want to get a good gift this Christmas, ask your mom to buy you the Do Not Arrest This Person t-shirt from losthash.com. Thanks for watching.